Hi, y'all. I'm Shannon Mitchell, a Black millennial entrepreneur and Amazon bestselling publisher, author, and all-natural product manufacturer. I'm a champion for your natural self-care, sustainable business care, and overall intentional wellness.
Hey, y'all. I'm Christine Gautreaux, a white social justice advocate, an international speaker, embodied coach, Amazon bestselling published author and publicist, and dancing social worker who helps you upgrade yourself and community care.
Together, we are a podcast rooted in the 8 dimensions of wellness and the co-founders of the Women Connected in Wisdom community.
And we like to get together every week for intentional conversations between us and special guests about how to be wise in business, relationships, and wellness.
Hello, hello, hello.
Hey, how are you doing?
Well, I am good because I'm inside and it's dry.
Yes.
You know, we are getting the beginning bands of Hurricane Helene here in Atlanta, both you and I, right?
Yes,
and we're
yes.
30 miles apart from each other.
Right? No, really.
But it's been a little rumbly. So just giving our listeners that are live today a heads up that if one of us pops off, hopefully the other one will still have power. And if we both go down, we're just going to, reschedule. But I'm hoping that we get to have this next hour conversation because I'm really excited about our guest and what we're talking about. And today we're talking about flow and unlock your genius for episode 172 and love what you do. I was thinking about us last night, because I've been doing a lot of out things like partner taxes and a business a grant for another organization I work for, like a lot of in-depth stuff. So how I counteract that is I tend to watch one snippet of a reality TV show where people's dreams are coming true, right?
Yeah.
I watched Dancing with the Stars. Do you ever watch it?
Yeah, it's been seasons and seasons.
Me
what season
too.
is it in now?
I don't know. It's 40 something, right?
Okay,
But
it's been a while.
What made me think of us is one of the housewives from Atlanta is on there.
Okay.
And I was I laughed and I said, I think it's people from Atlanta because she listed off all the things she does, right? One of which being a mortician. So she's this really accomplished woman and she listed off. And I thought about that when I did our intro today, because I'm there's not just one thing we do. There's 6 things we do. And I was
for right now.
up when I heard, right. I'll have to look up her name because I just watched, one episode and it went on. So I don't have everybody's names down yet.
That's
but
fine.
I will have to give another shout out also to the rugby player that's a Olympic medalist that is all about body positivity and women's rights and femininity. She's one of the dancers on the Dancing of the Stars this year. So really cool. It's a cool season. It's interesting. So we'll see. I'm not very good at TV, so I might keep up with it or I might not, but I just thought it was funny. I was okay. That's interesting. So how was your week? What have you been up to?
Let's see. Let's look. Sweet Auburn Fest. And I love Sweet Auburn Fest. Even though we were at the retail space for the last year and a half and had that space, we were at the retail space, one of the Sweet Auburns. That was a Musicfest in August, right? And the other one, we had the opportunity to be out there, be with the community, out in the huge events with the DJs. And we're planning on doing that again. So we've been watching this weather. That's literally this weekend. Yes, the 28th and the 29th. And thankfully, the weather's supposed to be beautiful. I think it'll have cooled it down, right? The skies will probably be beautiful. Hopefully it'll clear everything. Storms do that, but we'll see where we are. And we're watching it and talking about the plans for the team and everything going into fourth quarter.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was telling you earlier, pre-check, I don't often think about hurricanes in Georgia because we're inland enough, right?
Yeah.
I was oh, wait, we should be paying attention because my phone started blowing up today and telling me things. But I'm a farmer's daughter, so I have a freezer. So if you get in trouble, just come to my house. I got a freezer. Weird stuff in there, but it'll be okay.
So what would you say? What are the things that you have to have? What would you say?
What do you,
in the freezer?
Have fun or just to have in the freezer?
There might be a tornado. This is what this farmer's girl is going to always have. Around the 6th season, you have your chicken tortilla soup, right? What is it?
Oh, right. Just prepared meals, like things that I could heat up on a campfire or camp stove. Freezers aren't the best for, honestly, for tornadoes or hurricanes in case the power goes out, right?
Yeah.
That's more like the shelf life food. That's when I start thinking like my grandmother, who's a Great Depression baby, then, you used to can. Like I grew up learning how to can things because that stuff lasted on the shelf,
Yeah,
right?
it does. So
Yeah,
do you
I'm
have
probably in trouble.
what about this the cucumbers and like pickling simple vegetables? Do you know how that works? Is it
I do
vinegar?
know how that works, but
Because I
I'm
think I'm
not
asleep on the vinegar. I don't get it.
right with
But you're
vinegar and
what?
sugar. Like
Okay.
it's a fermenting process.
Okay. Okay.
And also when you can things, you use a heat process. So like your first of all, you sterilize all your jars and then you put whatever you're putting in the jars
Mhm.
and then you heat seal them. So it's a whole process. Don't quote me from the podcast, y'all. Look it up from an expert who knows how to do it.
It's not a
Take
recipe podcast.
do not take these simple instructions and give yourself food poisoning.
No,
Um,
please.
but there are so many people that can teach you how
Yeah.
to do that. Like I don't think I could articulate. I think I could do it because I grew up doing it enough, but I would also check myself as far as the temperatures and having a thermometer and making sure you got it to the right temp and making sure it was sealed correctly because all of that makes a difference. I did learn something new recently because of social media. They say to not store your canned goods like that you're doing like in your jars, like in your mason jars.
Mhm.
You don't store them with the actual ring on top because that creates the rust. Like you seal them that way, but then you take that ring off when they're properly sealed. And I
Mm.
was like, that's true.
And what do you do? The cheesecloth with the rubber band?
No, no, no. It has the metal
The
piece in
lid
it, but the
still?
actual
Oh,
ring
because
is
it's
not on
sealed.
because
That makes
that's the
sense.
part. Like I was like, yeah, that was interesting.
Okay.
We always had some of those
No,
rusty
really.
jars
You
around
know
my
what I mean?
neighbor's
The
house.
rusty lids. Yeah, yeah.
You're checking the date, and you're like, yeah.
Yeah, we're still here, right? It's still here.
Oh, but some of it was so good. And I will tell you, like years after she died, like opening some of her peach preserves or her, was just the sweetest gift. It was, because they outlasted her. And even my dad, because we just lost my dad in May, and I still have some jars of his sweet pepper relish that,
Mm,
I treasure because I
mm,
know they're the last of those jars and,
right.
still eating one. I mean, don't get me wrong. Like,
Right, that's what it's made for, yes. What do you put
but
it on? You put it on sandwiches, salads? What do you like to put it
oh,
on?
his sweet pepper relish, I often put it on black-eyed peas. I put it in chilies or stews. It's pretty spicy and it's got a little sweetness to it. But the when he so he was a organic farmer in Texas and he did incredible with peppers because of Texas's heat where he was.
Right.
So this hot pepper relish was made out of all kinds of different peppers, habaneros being one of them. So some of the jars I have are like fire.
Mm,
So I just literally use like a quarter of a teaspoon in some of
okay.
my recipes to give my recipes flavor, right?
Right. Simple.
Because it's powerful stuff. Now, some of
Simple.
my friend Laverne Baker Hotep up in
Mhm.
Pittsburgh, she'll eat it with chips. I'm like, girl, do you have any taste buds left? But that's the other thing you can do is you can take it and put it in. I have made my own salsa with it by taking like, roasted fire tomatoes and throwing
Right.
some of that in there and making salsa quickly.
Delicious.
Yeah.
And y'all, we usually don't talk about recipes this long. If
Right?
you have watched, right, a good portion of the other 171 episodes that we have, but this is physical wellness, right? We're talking about the flow. We're talking about
Right.
unlocking your genius. And a lot of what I think we struggle with is our lifestyle, right? I was talking to Pharaoh, it's not just a diet, right? It's a lifestyle. Like this,
Right.
your
How do you
practice
do
and
it?
what you do consistently and eating healthy. A lot of people they equate taking some of their favorite foods off with
Yeah.
food that's not going to taste like anything or stuff that's not going to spark joy. And we're here to spark joy and taste good and still be
Right.
medicine at the same time.
Well,
Still be
I
medicine.
can just testify. Like I was a skinny mini. Of course, I was running track and long distance, but
Yeah.
I did not start to struggle with weight until I left home
Mhm.
and got exposed to prepackaged food and things that were I'm losing my word, but I grew up farm to table. I grew up before that was even a thing because we were country and like we grew our own food and we didn't have the same, yeah. I find it very fascinating when I think about it because I didn't know. I mean, we had frozen food because we froze it. It was
Right. Right. Didn't buy it that way. We don't know how long it's been in the condition that it's in. Right. Yeah.
And I mean, and to be fair, because I always like to give the whole balance of the thing, y'all, it
Yeah.
wasn't always roses. Like, I mean,
Right.
I remember this. One of my favorite memories of my grandfather is when he moved to East Texas from Dallas Fort Worth area. He had different kind of soil. He had sandy soil, and he was so excited to plant red potatoes that year.
Mm.
And he was a good farmer.
Mhm.
So I remember being a little kid and we all got called down there as a family. I don't remember if it was a holiday or a weekend or what, but we all got called down there to bring in the potatoes because there were so many potatoes.
Wow.
And he had an old, I don't know, it's probably a 1970 blue Ford pickup truck. So a regular sized bed of a pickup truck. And I will never forget it because we mounded that pickup truck with little red potatoes. Now, what that means though, as a granddaughter of that farmer, is we ate those potatoes for every meal, for probably close to a year. I mean, you ate that, and we fed our neighbors, and we fed our friends, and we ate potato. Like that's what you had. So you ate I mean, sweet, sweet memory. But I do remember getting tired of potatoes that year.
I was gonna ask you how long it took. Yeah. And
A
okay,
long
so
time, because my grandmother,
yeah.
on my mom's side is Irish, and
Okay.
so, like, that Irish line came in really strong. I can still eat potatoes almost any way you can fix them for me, so
That's what I was about to ask you.
right.
Okay.
Yeah, that's good stuff.
Well,
Sorry, we've been off on a whole tangent today. Welcome, listeners.
you know, and again, why do I feel like it's worth the investment, right?
Right?
Not just because if you talk a lot, you're a podcaster and we're allowed to have it run as long as we want, right? But because we're talking about the flow. And that's what's stopping a lot of our flow physically, right? Is what we're eating, what
Right.
we're consuming. And we really got to stay on this rhythm. I was just on the podcast, Her Daily Rhythm, and talking about Shalo Glow, talking about the inside, the outside, deodorant, all these different things, and how we take care of ourselves is important. And Diane, our expert today, talks about flow and how to unlock your genius. So I would love to go into her bio so everybody can see how this conversation ties together. What do you think, Christine?
I think that's great. Can I give our listeners our dimensional definition first?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, let's do it. So today, y'all, we're talking about physical wellness. Our Women Connected in Wisdom definition is physical wellness is the ability to maintain a quality of life that allows you to thrive in your daily activities without undue fatigue or physical stress. Physical wellness recognizes that our daily choices, habits, and behaviors have an impact on our overall health, well-being, and quality of life.
So important. So important. And I was just watching this YouTube video about, again, nutrition. And this is why I'm thinking about gut health and what we eat. And we talk about flow and the balance of everything. I'm super excited to have Diane come up. So listeners, viewers, everybody who's here with us and going to download, let's get into her bio. International speaker and violinist Diane Allen is a TEDx, TED speaker, and thought leader who speaks on increasing the meaning, joy, and fulfillment in one's work and life by accessing the flow state. As the author of Flow, Unlock Your Genius, Love What You Do, Diane shares her insights on how to harness the power of flow. Years before neuroscientists discovered the positive impact of the flow state, Diane had already experienced its transformative powers in her own career as a violinist. Diane was the concert master of the Central Oregon Symphony for 15 years, a beloved violin teacher for 28 years, and author of the Fingerboard Workbook series for violin, viola, cello, and bass. It is her unique approach to getting into flow on demand that earned her a spot on the TEDx Naperville stage and features on TED, ABC, CBS, NBC, Fox, Associated Press, Boston Herald, Authority Magazine, and Thrive Global. Today, Diane is known for her experiential keynotes, training, and coaching programs that go beyond engagement, featuring her 3-step flow strategy system, which empowers people to get into their flow state, be in their genius, and love what they do. Welcome to the stage, Diane.
Wow. I have heard people read my bio so many times, but this is the first time I actually teared up.
Thank you so much.
I think that your intentionality as you spoke words about me is what really stood out. And I think that when you hear a bio like that, I'm just like regular old me, just like your grandparents with their jarring. And I'm thinking, wait a minute, like those preserved jars of food that you have, like from people who have, who have deceased. Like, I mean, that's like genius in a bottle, don't you think?
Right?
It's like has their essence.
Mm-hmm. And their love for sure.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Super powerful.
Oh, I love it.
Thank you so much.
I wanted to come off while you were reading that bio, Shannon. Diane, you've done so many amazing things and been so many places. And we are so excited to have you on Women Connected in Wisdom today to talk about flow and your 3-step process. And we already know we have a treat for our listeners. So I am just delighted you're here.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yes. So I would love to talk more about that. Can you tell our listeners about the 3-step process that you have?
Oh, wow. Let's just dive right in. So I think that to understand the 3-step process, which is something I came out with out of desperation, is like we have to really define what flow is. Because, going with the flow is passive. Being in your flow state is active. And going with the flow is a mindset, and being in your flow state is a mind state. So we're talking about psychology and neuroscience today. The positive psychology is the opposite of what, most psychology is, where you're like digging deep to, get that bad stuff out there. This is like the exact opposite. It's like, let's take a look at what's working well and reverse engineer it so that you can create more of that goodness in your life. And so that's what flow falls under the umbrella of. And, we're talking before we jumped on the podcast, like what is genius, right?
Yeah.
So Martin Seligman, he's the first psychologist who coined the term. And he talked about being in your signature strengths.
Yes.
Everyone has that unique thing that makes them tick. So my 3-step flow strategy system, I feel like it highlights what makes us tick. When you can define what that is for yourself, then you own it. Like if you could define it, you own it. If you can define what that is for you, then you can repeat it, which is getting into that optimal state of mind. So Mihai Csikszentmihalyi, another famous psychologist who did the most extensive research into flow, he described it as an optimal state of mind when you feel your best and you perform your best. And I like to describe it as when your genius and your heart become one. That's my take on it. So the neuroscience is much more recent, where they were actually able to figure out, I think what they did was they put some jazz players, in some sort of thing where they could track what was going on in the brains. And so when you think of a musician getting into the music, they're getting into their flow states. That's basically what it is. So it's something as a musician I had to do no matter what.
Right.
So, because no one's going to want to see a musician go through the motions, right?
No. You haven't done your skills. You're not tuned yet. No.
Which is why I do a lot of employee engagement speaking, right? You have to get into your job as a musician. You have to, right? So what is that, right? We'll get into it. Anyways, let's do the neuroscience first, because this is the physical aspect of it. When you are in flow, there's this flush of peak performance hormones. They are anandamide, endorphins, dopamine, serotonin, and norepinephrine. Because of this, we experience euphoria. We experience motivation. We experience peak performance and happiness. And I think that I'd like to hear both of your takes on the difference between happiness and joy. I'm kind of one of those people that kind of interchange them, but I do feel like happiness is more of a temporary thing, whereas joy is like a more, I don't know, systemic long-term thing. What's your take on those two?
Yeah, I agree with that. Like, happiness is situational. Let's say, as a kitchen manager, I go out to eat as a guest. Am I happy with the service? It depends on what happens, right? If it meets standards. Joy is a state I'm going to choose to be in, live in. And I'm there grateful for the opportunity that I can go out to eat. I have money to eat. I have time, something like that. That's how I think about it. But I know that even though it's a choice, that's not always the emotion we're feeling. And it's important to have that realistic expectation.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Right. I tend to be an interchanger of those two. I think of joy often. I think of joy has a little more depth for me. And the word does. But when you're talking about this, Diane, when you're talking about the neurology behind it, you probably already know this book, but I immediately think about Your Brain on Art. Have you read that new book?
I haven't.
It is
I'm sure.
one of the top picks right now for best books of 2023. It's How the Arts Transform Us by Susan Magsman and Ivy Ross. And what you're talking about is it fascinates, because people who are musicians, who are performers, who have played, who are artists, right?
Yeah.
We know this. We've known this for a long time because we've gotten into that flow or into that joy or into that. And I think science is, first of all, starting to study it, but catching up with us to say, yes, y'all aren't, making this up.
Right. And so the psychologist I mentioned earlier, Keith Mihai, he, in all of his research, he did completely, figure out like what are the numbers here, and he discovered that flow is not just for athletes and people in the arts. It's everybody gets into their flow state, and I believe that everybody gets into their flow state in their own way. You have your own unique way, but there's also a universal way that we can get into flow, which I'll go into both today. So let's just finish up the background of flow. So if we're talking about a mind state, not a mindset, and you're actually being active, the best way to know when you're in flow is to know the key indicators. And the first one is we lose sense of time because we just love what we're doing, right? How many times have you gotten more done, and there's also like this sense of ease, right? So if you think about this sense of ease and this time warp that you're in, right?
Yes.
How many times have people gotten more done in 30 minutes than they had in the last 3 days, right?
Yes.
Classic. And we like, oh, wow, lucky moment. How did that happen? I'm like, we're going to figure that out so that you can get into that on purpose. Okay. Yes. So that is an example, prime example of being in flow. So losing sense of time, having things come together with the sense of ease. Losing a sense of self is another one, but like, what does that even mean? Like losing a sense of yourself. So there are things that get turned on in your brain. There are things that get turned off in your brain. I already told you which peak performance hormones get turned on, where we feel that euphoria and that peak performance and like this sense of like, invincibility almost. But here's what gets turned off: your inner critic and your fight or flight response. Mm-hmm. When you are in flow, so stress narrows focus. When you're in flow, it deepens focus. Stress increases, all those cortisol, all the, stress hormones that get stuck in your body unless you exercise them out of you, right? But when you're in flow, those peak performance hormones are the things that actually open you up and give you that literal and physical feeling of satisfaction and fulfillment and meaning and joy.
Yes.
So, okay. So what do we do so far? Lose sense of time, lose sense of self, things coming together easily. How about ideas and insights coming in from out of the blue? Yeah. 95% of thoughts are repeating. But when you're in flow, you have new thoughts. Think of a shower moment. We all have those. Now, theoretically, that is not getting into your flow state. But what happens is the prefrontal cortex temporarily shuts down. And that's where your inner critic lives. And when that is shut down, that's when those ideas and insights flood in. And it just so happens that taking a shower also shuts down the prefrontal cortex. So we experience, ideas in the shower. And, we all know that if you don't document them right away, they might, go down the drain, right? We think, well, we won't forget them. But okay, then let's talk about the negative feedback loop and the positive feedback loop. So when you're in a negative feedback loop, you're having to use discipline and willpower to get things done, right? You're in a situation where your work drains you. But when you're in a positive feedback loop, when you're in flow, your work is so rewarding. And I'm saying work, but it could be anything. It's an activity. You have to be active to be in flow. Whatever activity it is that your work is, whatever it is that you're doing is so rewarding that it refuels you. And the last thing I want to hit on, for those of you who are Adam Grant followers, he is an organizational psychologist. And during the pandemic, he wrote an article in the New York Times, and he also gave a TED Talk on this very topic. And he talked about the mental health spectrum and how halfway between depression and flourishing, there's this midway point where you're fine, but you're not fine. You're functional, but you can't get motivated. You're just kind of blah. And Adam Grant specifically stated that the antidote to go from languishing to flourishing is to get into your flow state.
Thank you for saying that, because I love him and I didn't realize he had done a TED Talk on that. So we're going to put that in our show notes for folks. And I am loving what you're talking about, Diane, and that we can intentionally get ourselves into the flow.
That's why I got a TEDx talk, because most people think it's elusive.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And they think, okay, it comes and goes. It's a lucky moment. Or when people have those ideas and insights come in from out of the blue, they're like, pipe dream. Oh, that's just, I'm a daydream. That's a daydream. That's unrealistic. And people shut that down.
Right.
And
here,
so, yeah.
And I'm sorry for interrupting you. What were you going to say?
That was a perfect time to interrupt me, because my mind was going in two different places and I couldn't decide which road to go down.
I got you. No problem. Because what I was thinking is that is what we're told, right? That daydreaming is a waste of time, but we need that space, right? You need the space where you are not actively using your prefrontal cortex to make all of these decisions, right? Because we do have a limited number of decisions that we can actively make effectively throughout any day, right? So you need that space to create a reality other than what you're living in today, to create space for more joy. Like maybe yesterday you liked pita stuffed sandwiches and tomorrow you want to try a wrap and you want to do something different and you're thinking about it in the shower, But the reason I love what you're talking about too, Diane, is because of what we've seen recently, right? We were talking about these ladies, were they in Georgia, Christine? These ladies you told us about that were denied care.
Yes. Yeah. Well, they're everywhere right now, but especially in the South. Where they're coming up is places where our healthcare has been very constricted due to the new laws. And the ones you and I were talking about pre-show are in Georgia and have been making national news, but we've got a bunch in Texas too and other places.
Yeah. And so when we come from places like that, right, when we talk about the state of women across the world and where we are, it can be different to say, well, how am I going to reach this person that I feel like I'm becoming as a business owner or whatever position you see yourself in, when your environment sometimes can keep your body in a certain place. We talk about cortisol and stress. When you do ask for help and the police come and the outcome is not what you want it to be, and those are supposed to be vulnerable places, right? How can you be soft enough to go into flow? And what I think about, Diane, I love that. I feel like it's really a gift that you're giving people with this expertise. When I was little, I used to say only dead fish go with the flow. very like dry humor for a little girl, right? Like, I don't just do trends. I'm not just going to do it just because you told me to do it, right? But then thinking about gardeners, thinking about people like you and your family, right, Christine? I learned in a farm, and I think I shared this story, that when you're pulling up something by the root, you want to go with nature. Don't try to go against it, because you're just going to cut the root and it's still going to be there, So sometimes you have to go with the flow. And I think it's that key that you're giving us, the being intentional about the activity. And how do you say it, Diane? Mind state versus mind what?
Hey, y'all, this is a great place to take a break, take a deep breath, and hear from our awesome sponsors that make Women Connected in Wisdom podcast possible. Shannon, we are so grateful that Shayla Glow is the sponsor of the Women Connected in Wisdom podcast. And I wanted to take this moment to ask you, when you think about the people who use Shayla Glow, who are we talking about?
That's a good question. I think about 3 groups, really. One, the group that's removing hair, right? So whether you're using laser hair removal, waxing, shaving, you got to make sure that you're putting back what you're taking out. The second group, I think about those with dry skin and the problems that might cause, right? The scars, itching, burning, whatever the situation is, you definitely need all 3 steps, right? The exfoliation, making sure you're taking the dead skin cells off. The oil, putting in the moisture, and then the shea butter with the aloe, sealing it, helping you heal. Those things help both groups, right? And third, for the third group is those with chronic illness. The story is personally from cancer and different diseases that our population is dealing with on a daily basis throughout families as individuals. So I'm thinking about my mom and my grandmother and those around me with the same generational ties, right? And what positive, healthy habits we can start to make sure that we're maintaining our wellness, especially because the skin is like the cape, the exterior, the shield for your immune system. So with COVID, we have to be intentional about covering ourselves. And those are the groups I think about.
I love it. And you know what else I love about your product? It's all natural, handmade, and it smells great, y'all. So yay.
Tested. Yes, esthetician tested and approved. Yes. What about you? When you think about your company, what groups of people do you think about?
Well, I work with individual coaching clients. I work in community classes and with corporate teams. And with all of them, I use a strength-based embodied approach to help folks connect with themselves and access joy, reduce burnout, and build resilience. Especially during these times, I think we need it. I think we need all the hashtag partnership power we can get.
Yes.
Going with the flow is a mindset. But being in your flow state is a mind state. And that's why I started with the psychology of it.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
So,
that's important.
So I have, all right, here's the story that I told you that I wanted to tell you.
Yes, the book story.
I had a really fun event last night celebrating my book. The first time I let myself celebrate, we should
congratulations.
My editor was there, and the woman who did the layout, this gorgeous layout.
Please show it. Can you show it a little bit longer?
They were all there. Another friend of mine. I did everything locally. I really didn't want to go. A friend of mine made
beautiful.
It is.
Do not disturb. So our listeners that are not watching, that you're just listening, Diane is holding up a copy of her book, her brand new book. And she's also holding up this door hanger that says, "Do not interrupt. I'm going with the flow." Can you put that, what it says on the backside of it?
It says,
interruptions are the number one killer of flow. Oh my gosh, Diane. I need to know where to get one of those, please, for my office store.
We'll talk later.
Okay.
So anyways, all of the people that helped me to create this, they were all there. There was a small group of people, and there was a woman there there were people I didn't know. I was at a local community bookstore. And so this woman, she said, I had a caregiving job. She didn't say where it was, but it sounded like she was with some sort of company. And she said, everything you're describing about flow, I loved my job. I would have to get up early. I would get home late. The time would go by like that. I was so immersed in what I was doing. I absolutely loved it. And for years I had this job. And then something shifted and they put me in a different, I think she said in a different department or something, gave her a different job to do. And she lost it. She had no flow. She experienced no flow and she didn't have the words for it. She said, I just thought that, okay, now I hate my job.
Right.
I was like for years having this job that I love. Now I hate it. And then she's sitting there realizing it was a thing called the flow state that I was in. And if she had known what we're going to start talking about now, it's like, how can you get into it on demand, right? See, did she need to be in flow to do her job? Probably not, but she was. And it made her happy for decades, right? So I, out of desperation, I'm a violinist, right? I had a concert. Out of the blue, I couldn't get into the music. So it was an interruption, actually. Lead violinist of an orchestra. I'm holding up a picture of the orchestra. I'm second in command to the conductor. And this means I have to be at my best anytime, right? Didn't matter if my, toddler was awake all night or, we all had fevers or whatever, who had, whatever's going on. I had to always be at my best. So I was in the hot seat and whatever state I was in would ripple effect out throughout the orchestra and the audience. So I knew I always had to be on top of my game and I would do it by getting into the music. I didn't know all the neuroscience. I just knew that it worked. Get into the music, everything melts away. So one of the jobs I had was to take small groups of musicians to rural counties to do community outreach concerts. I love public speaking. I love playing the violin. It never occurred to me to bring the two together. So we're there and I'm like, this is totally casual. I'm in charge here. What the heck? So I gave the pre-concert lecture, had a great time, literally turned around, sat down, gave a big cue for the music to start, and my elbows were frozen. And I was like, what? Wow. So I had never practiced. I didn't do any planning. I did this spontaneous thing. And what I learned in that moment was, so when I do speaking, I have a different set of hormones in my body that don't work to play the violin. The violin is a very physical thing, right? You have to be very limber and right. So whatever stress hormones released into my body, I knew that if I sat there in my head, oh man, I can't believe I'm messing up. This is embarrassing. Like I knew if I had that mindset,
right,
that I would perpetuate the stress hormone dump.
Yes.
So I knew from experience, it's like, okay, neutral. We're going to be neutral mind. I'm just going to let it run its course. And it felt like an hour, but it was really only about a minute for me to regain the full use of my arms, right? Good. And like literally, I'm just thinking, just keep moving.
It's still a long time. Oh my goodness.
The longest minute of my life, right?
Right.
So that next to childbirth, right? So
right.
Anyway, so but okay, that went away, but I could not get into the music. And that's what really disturbed me. Because that was how I led myself to lead other people. That is how I led myself to be at my best. And it was gone. So that was the night I'm sitting on the couch feeling humiliated and I'm grilling myself with questions. And so I started asking myself, okay, so where, what, and why? These are the three questions. For those of you who see this, you see it. For those of you who don't worry. I've got all these handouts that I can give you for free. So we have where, what, and why. So the first question is where am I when I get into the flow state the most? Okay, on stage. What am I doing? Playing the violin, right? Captain Obvious. But the real question, the second question, the what question is two parts. What are you doing on the inside? And I was thinking, my friends would say, we're creating the music. And I really do get that because without the musician, we wouldn't hear it, right? We have to create it. But I was thinking, okay, you know what? It really feels to me like I'm sharing the message and I'm sharing the experience. And it felt the exact same when I read out loud to my son, sharing the message, sharing the experience, right? Felt the exact same way. So why? Why is that so meaningful? And I'm like, well, when you're sharing the message and you're sharing the experience, it unifies you. And there's something about being in music where you've got a large group of people coming together and uniting through the music. And that's what touches me to the core.
Yes.
So I'm going to review this, but these were the 3 questions that I asked myself to define how I uniquely get into flow. And so where are you located? What are you doing on the outside? Give you another example. Let's say you're in your office. Where you are is in your office. What you're doing on the outside is working on an Excel spreadsheet. Lots of people get in their flow state working on an Excel spreadsheet, as well as AI. That's a whole other conversation. What are you doing on the outside? Working on an Excel spreadsheet. What are you doing on the inside? Could be anything. You could be problem solving, strategizing, visualizing. One woman told me she's doing collaboration when she does Excel spreadsheets.
Mm-hmm.
Whoever's out there who's like, yes, that's me right now. I know you know what you do on the inside, right? So you just have to kind of go deep and think about that. And then once you know what you do on the inside, what that is for you, ask yourself, why is that? Let's say it's problem solving. I'm working on an Excel spreadsheet, love problem solving. Why is that so meaningful? And when you're asking yourself why, the why it's so meaningful question, I'm asking you to look for the values that are so beyond you that pull the best out of you. And we're talking about peace and love and freedom and equality and well-being and expansion, right? Self-actualization, whatever it is for you. Why is that so meaningful? And that's what I call a flow strategy. What you do on the inside is your most compelling internal self-motivator. And knowing what you do on the inside means you can now shift into the flow state on purpose. If I'm having an off day now, I know, share, find a way to share. Why it's so meaningful, that's those values that are so beyond you. These are those most compelling external self-motivators, those things that we strive for that bring the best out in us. And when you know why it's so meaningful for you, you know how to shift into the flow state with purpose. So there's a worksheet for this process in my book, but I just outlined it out loud. And so one of the let me give one more example. Okay, my father also passed away in May, so I'm with you, sister.
Yeah, so sorry for your loss, Diane.
Yes, likewise. So where my dad got into the flow state the most was dinner. Oh, he was the king of making dinner. What he was doing was always baking, not baking, but cooking. But I will tell you what he was doing on the inside was nurturing.
Mm-hmm.
And why? Is because he was pouring his love into the food and feeding it to the people he loved.
Oh, right? My dad and your dad could have been brothers because that describes my dad to a T. Yeah.
How does this system land for you?
I love it. What a great resource. Like, I love the simplicity of it, but it's so deep when you really look at it. But it really is like identifying. And, you know, in our system of interplay, we often notice. And that's what you're asking folks to do, is that noticing. Where are you? What are you doing? Both on the outside and the inside. And why are you doing it? Like, not just the why, but the why, you know?
Yes. And that's where I was with it too, the noticing. You know, we say that a lot on the show, notice instead of judge yourself when things are coming up. Like you said, I was at home and I was grilling myself. And that's after you got ready to speak and practice for the concert and had the concert. You know what I mean? So how do we notice instead of judge? I love how you made it really specific with steps. And I think that the part of what are you doing on the inside, I wrote it down because I feel like I need to sit with that a little bit more. What am I doing on the inside when I do different things? I think it'll help people come into their bodies, because so many people are dissociated. I think that'll help them know themselves better.
Oh, yes. Because what you do on the inside is that thing that makes you tick. Right. And what you just said was, I need to figure out, I can't remember exactly what you said, but you said in different things. And so let me go just give you some more examples of this in play, because you can use your flow strategy in different areas of your life, but you also have different flow strategies in your life. Right. So, for example, when I'm writing music, I'm in this room. That's where I am. What I'm doing is writing the music. What I'm doing on the inside, it's all problem solving. And why it's so meaningful for me is when I create a piece of music that really sounds like me, it's all about this freedom of speech and this ability to be able to be fully expressed. I mean, think about how many times that we have to be cordial or not ruffle feathers, right? This is a moment where I could just let it out, and people would love that when you're listening to music, right? Because it's right. So if you're having an off day, it gives you okay, what am I not doing here, right? Purpose is a really good one. I have found this year in particular that there are some very specific goals that I have, but the goals aren't to just meet the goals. They have very, very, I'll just tell you, I am working like crazy to get my husband to retire. We have to, yes, it's very technical. We have to have a certain amount of money and we have to have this and that and the other thing. Right.
Yes.
But when I'm having one of those days and I'm thinking the purpose is no, keep your eye on the prize. He really needs to retire. He needs to, on many levels. And that's another story, but it's a story of honoring your health and well-being.
Yes.
He does need to retire. So, so just reminding yourself of purpose and.
Yes. So I want to go back to your story about you got here and started helping clients with this out of the desperation, right? Was it this minute that you're waiting for your elbows to unlock and you had just told everybody that we were about to start and you can't start?
Yeah, that was the desperation moment.
Okay. Wow. So
yeah, because my job security and reputation were at stake.
Very important. And the cubes of everybody, and second chair can pick it up for you. But what does that mean? You know what I mean? So we have a special segment of this show that we've never done before, right? We've been talking about flow. We've talked about genius, and we're going to give you the opportunity to play some of your beautiful violin and show us some of what you do in your keynote speeches.
So what we're going to do is we're going to get into flow together.
Yes.
And I'm going to, along the way, this is a different way to get into flow. And it's based off of the psychologist I mentioned earlier, Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi. And here's how we're going to roll. I have a foundation line of music already recorded. I play an electric violin, so it's already recorded. We're just going to play it. And I'm going to give you an activity to do.
Okay.
So basically, you're going to clap to the music, and I'm going to, and if you're just in a place where you're in public and it would be weird for you to be walking around with earbuds on, clapping, just tap something. Okay. Just, take a finger and tap your leg or something. Just find a way. The thing is that if you want to get into flow, you can't just watch this happen or listen to it happen. You actually have to clap or tap in order to experience it. So as we get started, clapping to the music, not a big deal, but you might learn something from a musician about clapping to the music. So I'm going to give you a series of challenges. The challenges are designed to kind of shift your thinking. And as we go through the challenges, you have to stay in the game. even if you feel uncomfortable, right? And to use Shannon's word, just notice what's going on. You're basically in a state of observation. Oh, okay. I'm clapping. I'm asking to be challenged. I'm going to notice what happens. I'm still going to do the challenge. I'm just going to be neutral minded, right? We want to stay neutral and just observe and see. I'm going to give you a series of challenges. Once we finish, I'm going to ask you a few questions to see to what degree you were in flow or out of flow. And then I'll share with you the system that gets you into flow. Sound good?
Yes.
Okay. So here comes the first line of music.
I'm so excited about this. Well, she
I'm
gets
so
set up. I just have to tell you.
So just listen first. So if you're watching the video, we may not look coordinated because the streaming services, right? We don't know if they're all going to be coordinated. So just roll with it. Just use your ears for whatever you're listening to. So I'm going to count you in now. 1, 2, 1, 2, ready, go. Keep going. So for your first challenge, I'm going to deepen your focus. And you're simply going to observe. Are you clapping right with the violin, a split second before, a split second after? Just observe. Keep that focus and don't let it go. You're still going to observe in what relation you're clapping to the violin part. The next thing I want you to do, for those of you who are seeing me, I'm going to start to conduct you so you have a visual. But for those of you who are just listening, I want you to imagine a conductor is conducting the beat. 1, 2, 1, 2. So you see a visual while you're still observing. Are you clapping with the violin a little before, a little bit after? So there are probably thousands of people that are going to be listening to this and doing this exercise. And although you might not be doing it at the same time, in one way or another, it's the music that's uniting us all together. We've all heard of the concept of oneness. We're experiencing that right now. For the last challenge, I'm going to play a song you have never heard before. And your job is to end the song at the same time that I do.
Bravo, bravo, bravissimo.
Did you have some sort of experience?
It was beautiful.
I stopped with you.
Yeah,
that was powerful.
Yeah,
that was powerful.
And here you are just clapping to the music, but then I start playing all these different things, and you're like, wait a minute, I gotta stick with my own thing. So so the skills that we just used were clapping or tapping to the music. There was deep focusing going on and deep listening. Those are all skills. The challenges were just to observe to what relationship you were with the violin. And the purpose was this concept of oneness. Okay. And the other challenge was end the song at the same time that I did, right?
Right.
So according to Csikszentmihalyi, at the intersection of skill and challenge is the universal entry point into flow. So I want you to just think about it. If you have a skill that's not challenged, it's not going to ignite anything. If you have a challenge without skill, it's not going to ignite anything. It is the two together that ignites flow.
Beautiful.
Purpose. When I started talking about the concept of oneness, did you feel like it took it to another level? Because that's what purpose does.
Right.
And when you think of volunteer work, it's this model. If you have to think of a Venn diagram with 3 circles: skill, challenge, purpose, and they're all intersecting right in the middle. So the reason why people love doing the hard work of volunteer work is because you've got a group of people with a variety of skills coming together to meet a challenge, and they're all doing it for a purpose. And in that environment, this is what I was saying, flow state is active, right? We're not talking about a passive thing right now. So you are getting yourself just outside of your comfort zone with the challenge. And that's what stretches us. And when you have that purpose piece, this is when we grow and we go beyond what we think we ourselves are actually capable of. Because a lot of times there's various degrees of being in flow. You could be a little bit in flow or a lot of flow. When you're the deepest in flow, these are most of the times when you're in your most innovative and expansive state, where you do go beyond what you think you're capable of. So the question then is like, how can you create this vibe anytime you want? And it's simply to use this Venn diagram, right? Skill, challenge, purpose, as an assessment tool or as a planning tool. When my book event, my author event I gave last night, there was a photographer there. She goes, I go to the same places all the time, because I know they're the most beautiful places and I know I can get good shots, but I'm bored. And now I realize I haven't challenged myself in a while. And she was excited because she realized that's been the missing piece. Now she knows to look for the challenge and it's going to ignite that flow again. So sometimes you have to learn a skill, right?
Yes.
So I speak at a lot of HR conferences because I'm talking about, employee wellness and happiness. And so this woman, she said, when you learn a new skill, it is a challenge, but here's where the challenge is subjective, because one person's big, hairy, audacious goal is going to pull the best out of them, but crush somebody else. Right.
Right.
So you have to have the right amount of challenge to ignite flow. So anyway, she said learning a skill is a challenge, but purpose can keep you motivated. That said, once that skill is honed, now you have to replan, give it new challenges, or maybe even give it new purposes. And so if you're just always using this as a lens that you look through, you can always create these situations. I'll give you one more example here. Me and my email inbox. I'm way overskilled to do that. I usually don't pre-think about purpose because, once I'm in the emails, I always find purpose, for each person, and how am I going to communicate with them and do it in a meaningful way. But how I challenge myself, I just say, get it done by 10:30, Diane. And I rise to the occasion, if I do that, I give myself a challenge. So
I love that.
And it helps. And it helps with the what you were saying earlier, the ease when you do it. For me, if I set a timer and I know it's 20 minutes, it could be 2, it could be 5, it could be 10, but I know it's set and I'll be alerted, and then I can let that go and be where I am.
Being very present is another, and focus is another piece of flow, right? Yeah. And if you think about that woman that I mentioned last night, who her job changed and she had no access back to her flow state. have it analyzed for herself, right? I'll share with you this one story. There was this gentleman. He was a real estate developer, and he was on the C-suite team, and he had incredible fear of public speaking. And every year they give the annual meeting, and having a leader not on stage is not good, right? He had to get over his fear of public speaking, right? Mm-hmm. So, it turns out he was an avid bike racer. So we took a look at his flow strategy in bike racing, and it was all about teamwork. Because it was never just like one person. It was always, team racing. And like, put him on a bike. Okay, where he is in a race, right? What he's doing on the outside is riding his bike. But he like puts himself aside and will do anything for his teammates. And why that's so meaningful for him is that it ignites that team synergy. It's not just about him. It's about outside of him. It's getting everybody and group flow is team synergy. Yes. I experience in the orchestra all the time, right? That example of volunteerism, when you got to put a bunch of people together, we've all experienced group flow together in some time, in some way. So anyways, he was like, wow, I'm just putting myself aside and I'm doing it for the team. And that igniting team synergy, I know what that feels like. That's all he needed. I can't tell you how many people figured out their flow strategy and overcame fear of public speaking. Like that, just because they knew how to be on stage. And so that's the last thing I'll share is that we are in a doing world. And the real question is how are you being when you're doing? Yes. And I'm going to say, can you get into that unique spot of you in your flow strategy, or you're using the skill challenge purpose model to get into that sweet spot so you could be in that state of being and not just doing, but that deeper feeling of purpose and meaning and all of the joy.
I love that, Diane. Such great wisdom.
Yes. So we talked a little bit about it, right? We're talking about physical wellness and what you help your clients do, the stories that you've heard at your book events. What are you doing personally for your physical wellness to be intentional this week?
Well, yes, I'm a little sleep deprived. I purposefully today, I do practice yoga. I try to go 3 times a week, and I usually do a very active class. And I was like, nope, you're doing the yin class tonight. Beautiful. So I am in action on that. And then tomorrow my slate is cleaner. So I'm going to just not try to push myself through the day, even though I feel like I have to get caught up. Whatever. Right. Take a nap. Novel, right? Take a nap.
Yes. Beautiful.
Love it. What about you, Shannon? What are you up to this week?
Hashtag for wisdom and action is going to be stay consistent. I've been working, I shared in the community, right, that I'm working on getting back on my running schedule. Mm-hmm. So running 4 times a week, depending on what I'm doing, I might switch it, right? There was a season there, Diane, I was at Topgolf. One of the locations had 3 stories. The other one had 2. If I'm doing flights of stairs and all these steps, I might take it off, right? But being consistent in doing it, keeping my non-negotiables. And I shared last week, I started with my checklist again. So just really building out the time to moisturize my hair, make sure I drink water, make sure I have the food ready so I don't have to do everything all, when it's time to start working on our projects. What about you?
Oh, I have so many things going on this week, but I'm going to hashtag the get in the flow because I love that description, Diane, about it being an active state versus being passive. And I have a couple of things I'm doing. Some of my walking goals may not make because I walk outdoors with my neighbors. And a lot of I loved how you framed all this up, Diane, because so much of the work and when I'm in my flow and my purpose, it's about connection. And, and so that just makes me so happy. But yeah, I'm going to hashtag get in the flow. And I'm also going to rest more. So I'm going to rest more this week. Those are my things for physical wellness for sure.
I got an itch that I have to scratch because both of you mentioned your exercise.
Yeah.
And so many times, whether you're walking the dog or out on the treadmill, or running, whatever it is, that people get into flow. That's when those ideas and insights come in from out of the blue. So if you want to really make the most of that, take a challenge for a walk. You just set an intention. I'm going to solve this problem. Forget about it. Go take your walk. Forget about it. And then let it come to you. So that's another way, like in Cheek Sent Me High's book, he does talk about walking is a skill. Being out in nature gets us in flow naturally. And if you just ignite it with a challenge.
Ooh, I love that.
Yeah,
I love that a lot.
Go daydream a little bit.
I'm going to put in the show notes like your TED Talk and how to connect with you on LinkedIn. Are there any other ways we should let our listeners know about how to connect with you if they want to work with you privately or find you at a book event?
So we will give the book link, the Amazon book link, so that you can get that. And then I have a free gift. It's basically the cliff notes of what we talked about today, plus a couple videos. And my TEDx and another video are on that page as well. So it's tinyurl.com/flowstategift. And we'll have that written down below.
You bet. Thank you so much. This has been such a great conversation.
Yes.
Just so lovely to know you and your work in the world and be connected. This has been delightful.
Thank you.
Talk to you soon.
Oh my goodness. I know we're past time, but that was so yummy. I just couldn't.
It was worth it. Worth every second, right? That's what we're here for. Again, if you I'm for the soapboxes, I'm for the details, so the listeners and everybody who's gonna download it and watch it can get what they need.
Absolutely. Such a generous gift also. So we've got all the notes for you in our show notes, folks. So if you're driving, don't worry about it. You can access it online. And also just remember to connect with us on socials and follow our podcast. And that way you have a link to it. Shannon, I know you mentioned the Auburn Avenue Fest coming up. We'll put a link to that in show notes. Sweet Auburn Fest. Thank you. Is there anything else we want to give a shout out about before we close episode 172?
I think, I just want to tie it all up with the flow. We were talking about unlock your genius and love what you do. And sometimes with that example of this woman who felt like she didn't love her job, right? It could have been flow. And I love that Diane helps her teams and her clients tap into that on demand. I also think it's about working in your genius, right? And I could try to hold myself in this flow state, right? But if I'm not sparking joy of what I'm doing, I read this book where the team was actually able to put this gentleman back in his other position because he was better as a salesperson than he was as a manager of a sales team. And it just didn't work with him as a leader of the team. And maybe it's that, but to notice it, take the challenge on the walk. And if you find yourself in those difficult situations, we've talked about heart math. Now we can also talk about your flow state and what are those things that you do that you have in your toolbox, like Sula talks about, right? That you can pull out when you need them in different times. So we're centered coming into these difficult situations. We talked about politics. We talked about a lot of stuff that's on the table right now for everybody. And I hope it was as encouraging for you guys and you ladies as it has been for us, because I thoroughly enjoyed myself.
Right? Me too. And we'll be back next week. As my grandmother used to say, Lord willing and the creek don't rise.
Right?
It's really in my brain. My grandmother's very present with me during this hurricane. It's very interesting. I'm noticing that. Like we were talking about her a lot pre-show and start of the show, and now her words wanted to come out. So
what's her name?
Lila Ruth Nichols. I called her my nanny. So and
this water is rising.
Right, water's rising. You got to pay attention to the creek. So
very important.
My country showing now with the weather. Here we go.
I love it. We like to keep the country out. So thank you so much for joining us for episode 172. We'll see you live at 5 here next week. In the meantime, don't forget,
be well,
be wise, and be whole. Peace.
Thanks for listening. This has been the Women Connected in Wisdom podcast. On air live on Wednesdays at 5 p.m. Eastern via Facebook and YouTube. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe. Be part of the conversation and get connected at womenconnectedinwisdom.com.